Now, Billboard Chris, the activist and Canadian father known for wearing a sandwich board and that reads "Children cannot consent to puberty blockers" and engaging in conversation in viral videos across the world, has mounted a legal defence of free speech in Australia with support of ADF International. Joining me in the studio to tell us why is spokesperson for ADF International, Lois Mclatchie Miller. Thank you for joining us. So why does he need to step up and defend Australian free speech?
Well, no child has ever been born in the wrong body, and this is a message that Billboard Chris has been committed to for some time, so much so that he even straps it to his body and walks around the streets engaging in conversation, because this is fundamentally one of the most important conversations we're having in our era, right? And so Billboard Chris has been engaging in this for a while, and he took to Twitter recently to express concern because the WHO, in setting guidelines on transgender care around the world, had appointed experts to a panel, including a very specific transgender activist who the Daily Mail had reported was engaging also in promoting inappropriate things like bondage and bestiality and things that are not appropriate. Expert in Chris's opinion.
I'm going to say in Chris's opinion.
In Chris's opinion. And so Chris tweeted his opinion, as many of us are prone to do on the social media platform X. He's a Canadian using an American platform to tweet to engage in his free speech. But somehow the Australian government heard about this tweet, and their e-safety commissioner asked Twitter to pull it down. Twitter initially said no. After receiving an order to do so, they've temporarily geo-blocked it in Australia, so no Australians can hear Chris's message. And a court case has ensued with both X and Billboard Chris fighting for free speech in Australia, because Australians deserve the right to be discussing this fundamentally important issue about the future of our children.
Because I think it was just this week, wasn't it, when Elon was interviewed and he said the only time free speech is important is about when someone is saying something you disagree with. Because obviously, if someone says something you agree with, then of course you'd think you like that free speech. Everyone laps that one up. But this is not even necessarily about the topic, is it? There must be many people who disagree with what Billboard Chris is saying, and they have the right to disagree with it. How are they going to know what they're disagreeing with if they never get to read it?
Well, exactly. And I think what makes this case more sinister is this isn't a casual case of cultural cancellation. This is a state authority telling a citizen, not even of their own country, that they are not allowed to express an opinion, A, about an important topic, and B, about a policy-making body that is going to be affecting governments around the world. And we're seeing this as with ADF International. We're seeing a trend of this across Western countries, with governments interfering in what is peacefully expressed opinion on Twitter. In Finland, we have another case where a grandmother and politician is at the Supreme Court later this year because she tweeted a Bible verse and expressed concern about her church's involvement in a pride parade. Obviously a controversial topic, but not one that should be shut down by the state. Over in Mexico, we're supporting two politicians who misgendered a colleague on Twitter and have been convicted of gender-based political violence. And a court authority ordered them to apologize twice a day for 15 days online as part of their punishment. And we're supporting them in seeking justice after what happened. But we can see across the world again and again in countries that we expect to be upholding human rights, upholding free speech for the world to see. We're seeing increasing censorship, increasing blasphemy laws really against the popular opinions of today.
The fact that you could be sentenced to having to tweet things, it's like giving someone lines, isn't it?
Yeah.
Use TweetDeck, you can schedule the tweets, get it all over, but that's probably not really the point, is it? For ages, people said of the internet, it's the Wild West, it's uncontrollable, and that was what we thought, like it would be a place where there can't be restrictions, and yet suddenly we're hearing all of these news stories. How legally is it happening?
Well, it's the new public square, isn't it? It's in older times, there would be conversations that happen in public squares and meeting places and markets. And now these voices are much more exposed. They're amplified because anyone can see a tweet, and therefore any government can see a tweet. And we're saying not only the government of your own country might disagree with your view, but the government of another country. And this is putting immense pressure on social media platforms like X and others like Facebook, who, when it comes to the European Commission, for example, are constantly getting into trouble with how they're supposed to manage this, meeting the expectations of governments and yet allowing free speech to continue online. And it's just an unsolvable dilemma. I think governments obviously have to allow for free speech, allow for criticism, even if it makes them uncomfortable.
In the old days when people used to say what they thought in town squares, there were some governments that would shut that down.
Well, exactly.
And they probably aren't the governments we want to be.
No.
Yeah. How are things looking for this, though? So, you're taking on the case, and hey, Elon money has got to be buying some good lawyers. But does this look like it's going to be a fruitful endeavor?
Well, X's case and Wilbur Chris's case are similar, but not entirely joined. So if people want to contribute to Wilbur Chris's cause, there's ways you can do that on the ADF International website. But they will have a hearing likely in early fall, and we'll hear more about that then as the case progresses, as this fight for free speech continues. And I think it will gain a lot of worldwide attention, so I'm sure we'll hear more about it soon.
You say it will get worldwide attention. I imagine there'll be one country that tries to geo-ban, and
You're quite right.
It might get away with it.
It might get away with it, exactly. But I think the important thing is for all of us outside of Australia is to be talking about this, raising attention to these cases, whether it's Australia or Mexico or Finland or Nigeria or any place around the world who have blasphemy laws or hate speech laws, or who are bringing them in, like in Scotland and Ireland, and who are considering bringing in this legislation which will suppress free speech not only in person but online, and show this to these governments before this legislation is passed and say, look what can happen, look where we can end up, so that we can turn this tide around and stop this censorship across the West.